The Vexari delegation departed, leaving the bridge of the Thunderchild in tense silence. Lieutenant Sato was the first to speak. "They're lying, Captain." Miranda nodded, studying the data streaming across her neural interface. The Vexari biosignatures showed telltale fluctuations during key moments of the exchange. "The question is which part was the lie," she said, her voice deliberately steady for the bridge crew. "Commander Ellis, analysis of their technology." Ellis, the ship's science officer, pulled up holographic schematics. "Their propulsion is at least 3 generations beyond ours, officially. Power signatures suggest crystalline fusion, similar to what we developed in the Europa facility." "The facility that doesn't exist," Miranda said with a thin smile. "Precisely. But there's something else." Ellis manipulated the hologram, highlighting the alien vessel's hull. "These patterns aren't decorative. They're computational arrays. Their ship is essentially one massive distributed processor." Miranda walked to the viewport, gazing at the stars. Humanity had spent decades pretending to struggle with quantum computing while secretly mastering it. How many other deceptions were at play in this cosmic chess match? "Begin infiltration protocol," she ordered, "and prepare the diplomatic suite for our reciprocal visit." 12 hours later, Miranda boarded the Vexari vessel wearing an environmental suit that concealed more than it protected. Woven into its fabric were quantum resonators that recorded everything around her at the subatomic level. Ambassador Scrax guided her through corridors that seemed to shift and realign. "You're the first human to board a Concorde vessel," he said, his translator rendering his vibrating speech patterns into crisp English. "An honor," Miranda replied, noting how other species they passed seemed to defer to the Vexari with something beyond respect, something closer to fear. In the central chamber, a circular array of 17 pedestals represented the founding species of the Concorde. Only 9 were physically present. The others appeared as sophisticated holograms. "The Unified Council acknowledges Earth's representative," announced a being composed of what appeared to be flowing mercury. "We have studied your transmission records extensively. Your species' penchant for conflict concerns us." Miranda bowed slightly. "We've grown beyond our warring past." A ripple of communication passed between the council members, not spoken, but transmitted somehow. Miranda's suit recorded the encrypted stream for later analysis. "Yet you arrive in a vessel named after a warship from your fiction," countered another counselor, a towering insectoid. "Thunderchild, from your War of the Worlds." Miranda allowed herself to look surprised. "You've studied our literature." "We study everything," replied Scrax. "Your species produces an unprecedented volume of speculative scenarios, what you call science fiction. Most concerning is how many envision humanity triumphing over more advanced civilizations. The mercury being flowed closer. It suggests a deeply rooted belief in your exceptionalism." "Fiction reflects fears as much as aspirations," Miranda countered. "We imagined aliens because we hoped we weren't alone. We imagined conflict because we feared the unknown." As the diplomatic dance continued, nanoprobes detached from Miranda's suit, invisibly mapping the vessel. One probe located what appeared to be a containment facility deep within the ship, holding representatives of at least 6 unknown species in suspended animation. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Admiral Yamamoto reviewed the Thunderchild's covered transmissions from the secure lunar facility designated BLACKTA-UGG. Beside him, Dr. Evelyn Shaw, architect of humanity's quantum shield technology, studied the Vexari energy signatures. "They could destroy the Thunderchild with a thought," she murmured. "That's what they're supposed to think," Yamamoto replied, activating a communication channel to the 30 vessels hidden throughout the solar system. "All commanders, descent protocol now at stage 2. The game has begun." Miranda entered the Galactic archives, a privilege granted to her as Earth's diplomatic envoy. Her Vexari guide, Trill, a junior diplomatic attaché with luminescent patterns flowing beneath his translucent skin, seemed perpetually nervous. Most species gain archive access only after decades of Concord membership, he explained, leading her through security fields that analyzed her down to the cellular level. What they couldn't detect was the quantum-entangled storage embedded in her modified nervous system, recording everything she observed. The archive chamber spanned impossibly large dimensions, defying the exterior size of the structure. Data columns stretched upward into darkness, containing the accumulated knowledge of 17 spacefaring civilizations. Your assigned terminal is limited to historical and cultural databases, Trill explained. Scientific and military archives require higher clearance. Miranda nodded pleasantly. Culture is what interests me most. Once alone at her terminal, she activated the microsignal that triggered her implants. To any observer, she appeared to be browsing Concord historical texts. In reality, she was executing a complex infiltration program designed by Earth's best digital warfare specialists. The first firewall yielded in seconds. The second took minutes. The third, designed with non-linear quantum encryption, would have been impenetrable if not for the backdoor algorithm that Dr. Shaw had theorized existed in all Concord systems. The Concord's technological standardization was its greatest vulnerability. The restricted archives opened before her. What she found confirmed Earth's worst fears. Admiral Yamamoto stood in the observation dome of Luna Base Alpha, watching Earth rotate slowly against the star-filled backdrop. Behind him, holographic displays showed the progress of 30 warships moving through their final preparation protocols. The ESS Nemesis reports all systems optimal, announced his adjutant, Commander Ortiz. Captain Katri requests final authorization for weapon system activation. Yamamoto's expression remained neutral. Granted. But remind all commanders, no signatures above level 3 until my direct order. The doors slid open as Dr. Shaw entered, her face grim. The data packet from Captain Chen just decoded. Admiral, you need to see this. The holographic display shifted to show classified Concord files, species designations, evolutionary assessments, threat categorizations. Earth featured prominently, classified as potentially disruptive. Grade 1. They've only encountered 3 other Grade 1 species, Shaw explained, bringing up comparison files. The Nyx, the Thalassans, and the Kerethi. All now serve as specialized contributors to the Concord. The images shifted to show members of these species, their eyes vacant, movements mechanical. Not slaves in the conventional sense, but something perhaps worse, being stripped of their essential nature. The compliance protocol involves targeted neurotransmitter modification, Shaw continued. It doesn't remove intelligence, just independence, initiative, the drive to question. Yamamoto studied a Concord manifest with growing horror. They've already manufactured enough of this agent to affect every major population center on Earth. There's more, Shaw said quietly. The Thunderchild's position has been compromised. Concord internal communications indicate they've discovered Captain Chen's reconnaissance activities. They're planning to seize the ship within 12 hours. Yamamoto turned to the lunar horizon, where Earth hung like a blue jewel. Accelerate the timeline. All ships to preliminary deployment positions. He paused, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. And send the evacuation code to the Thunderchild. Tell Miranda. Tell her to get out if she can, but the mission comes first. The mission or Earth? Shaw asked softly. At this point, Yamamoto replied, they're the same thing. The banquet hall's crystal ceiling reflected the light of 3 moons, casting prismatic patterns across the assembled diplomats. Miranda, still shaken from her food taster's collapse, found herself cornered in an alcove by Skrax, his skin cycling through disturbed patterns of deep violet and pulsing amber. Your suspicions saved your life, he whispered, mandibles clicking nervously. The subjugation directorate moved without council authorization. Miranda's hand remained near her concealed sidearm. Why are you telling me this? Because I remember, Skrax replied cryptically. His inner eyelid flickered. Before the Vexari joined the Concord, we were much like humans, curious, aggressive, independent. I studied your history extensively. Your Cold War. We had 3. Your World Wars. We had our continental purges. He extended a tendril, revealing a small data crystal. The Directorate has manufactured a targeted pathogen. It doesn't just make humans compliant. It preserves your problem-solving abilities while removing the emotional capacity to question authority. Miranda didn't reach for the crystal. And I should trust you because I'm one of the few remaining Vexari with a neural exemption. The original diplomatic corps was allowed to maintain full cognitive function to better understand potential Concord additions. His skin darkened. We were supposed to be phased out centuries ago, but some of us have persisted. A commotion erupted across the hall, Concord security forces entering in formation. Not the ceremonial guard, but tactical units. They know, Scrax hissed, pressing the crystal into her hand. This contains deployment plans, pathogen specifications, and something else, evidence of a resistance network within the Concord. Find the shattered eye. Miranda activated her subdermal emergency beacon. What happens to you? I'll create a diversion. They'll assume I was compromised by human infiltration techniques. They'll kill you. Scrax's skin displayed a pattern Miranda hadn't seen before. Concentric rings of resolute blue. No. The Compliance Directorate never wastes potential assets. They'll recondition me. His external gill slits flared. Ironic. A diplomat's final act being one of war. Miranda sprinted through maintenance corridors, the station's artificial gravity fluctuating as emergency protocols activated. 2 Concord security officers blocked her path. She didn't hesitate. The first combat implant activated as she moved, neural accelerators flooding her system with enhanced reflexes. Her first strike crushed the lead officer's breathing apparatus. The second officer managed to discharge his weapon. A paralytic energy pulse that Miranda's augmented nervous system absorbed and redirected. Impossible, the officer gasped in his native tongue. The translator still functioning as Miranda's fist, connected with his thoracic plate. Blood streaming from a facial wound where a security barrier had sliced her cheek. Miranda reached her quarters and the encrypted quantum communicator hidden within her diplomatic credentials. The device required a DNA verification. Smearing her blood across its surface fulfilled that requirement. They're coming now. Execute descent. The communicator disintegrated after transmission, molecular bonds dissolving into untraceable dust. Miranda accessed the station schematics she'd memorized, identifying 3 potential escape routes. The pathogen data crystal felt impossibly heavy in her pocket. Whatever happened to her, that information needed to reach Earth. The station's lighting shifted to combat protocols, harsh red illumination replacing the ambient glow. Through the viewport, Miranda saw Concord vessels moving into blockade formation around the diplomatic station. Her hand moved to the final option. A capsule embedded beneath her skin at the base of her skull. One press would release a neurotoxin, ensuring she couldn't be taken alive for interrogation. Instead, she removed the ceremonial blade from her diplomatic insignia, a weapon disguised as decoration, and prepared to carve her way to the emergency shuttle bay. Earth needed her alive more than it needed her dead. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez stood on the bridge of the Thunderchild, the captain's chair remaining conspicuously empty. The vessel shuddered as another barrage of Concord weapons fire connected with their shields. Shield harmonic adaptation complete, reported Ensign Wong from the tactical station. Efficiency increased by 12%. We've matched their attack frequency. Ramirez nodded grimly. They'll change patterns again. Keep the adaptation protocols running. He turned to communications. Any word from the escape shuttles? 3 have successfully broken through the engagement zone, replied Lieutenant Park. Captain Chen's shuttle is still unaccounted for. The ship rocked violently as a new weapon struck them, something that bypassed the external shields and resonated through the hull plating itself. Hull integrity compromised on decks 4 through 7, shouted the damage control officer. They've deployed some kind of molecular destabilizer. Adapt, ordered Ramirez, and bring us about. If the Thunderchild is going down, we're taking hostages with us." Aboard the Concorde command vessel, High Commander Vex Troll watched with growing alarm as the human vessel executed a maneuver that should have been impossible with its damaged propulsion systems. "Their shield harmonics are shifting faster than our targeting computers can compensate," reported his weapons officer. "And they're on a direct collision course." "Impossible," Vex Troll hissed. "No species at their development stage should be able to." He stopped abruptly, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Deploy the subjugation pulse. Full spectrum." "But Commander, at this range it will affect our boarding parties as well." "Do it." In the vacuum between the vessels, the escape pods from Thunderchild continued their ballistic trajectories, not away from the battle, but directly toward enemy ships. Inside Pod 7, Master Sergeant Helena Ortiz checked her power armor seals one final time. "Remember your training," she told the 5 Marines under her command. "Their internal atmosphere is methane-rich, but their security forces use personal environment fields. Target those generator nodes first." The pod's trajectory suddenly altered as it was caught in a tractor beam. Perfect. The Concorde's automated defense systems were operating exactly as expected. "They're pulling us into a reception bay," reported Corporal Jackson, monitoring the navigational display. 15 seconds to contact. Ortiz activated the pod's final protocol. "Initiate breach package." The pod's outer shell began to glow as a thermite-based reaction superheated its surface. When it connected with the Concorde ship's hull, both materials briefly liquefied, creating a molten breach point. "Execute," ordered Ortiz. High Commander Vex Troll staggered as his flagship shuddered. Warning signals blared from multiple stations simultaneously. "Security breach in sectors 7, 12, and 21, reported his second-in-command. "The human escape pods, they're carrying boarding parties." "Preposterous," Vex Troll snarled. "Their atmospheric requirements alone should." "They're wearing some kind of self-contained combat suits," interrupted the security chief. "Our standard suppression fields aren't affecting them. They're targeting environmental controls and weapons nodes with precise efficiency." A new alarm sounded, more urgent than the others. "Anomalous energy signatures detected at the lunar horizon," called the sensor officer, voice rising in pitch. "Multiple vessels emerging from stealth configurations. Their energy profiles exceed anything in our database for human technology." Vex Troll moved to the command interface, preparing to order a strategic retreat, when the entire vessel shuddered violently. The view screen flickered, then stabilized to show a human vessel, sleek, angular, and radiating power signatures that shouldn't exist. On its hull, illuminated against the darkness of space, ESS Rechurai Butuvan. Commander Elena Jackson's breath fogged inside her helmet as she led her team through the sub-zero temperatures of Caldera 3's computational nexus. The massive chamber stretched beyond human visual range, filled with crystalline structures that hummed with data. "Infrared's picking up movement," whispered Lieutenant Quan through the tactical channel. 100 meters ahead. Multiple signatures. Jackson signaled the team to disperse into combat formation. Their exo-atmospheric combat suits had been modified for this specific mission, incorporating stealth materials that absorbed both thermal and electromagnetic signatures. "Hold fire unless engage," she ordered. "Remember, potential friendlies." They emerged into a vast spherical chamber. The walls pulsed with bioluminescence, revealing countless Terethi workers connected to the crystalline mainframe via neural interfaces. In the center, suspended in a nutrient bath, floated a being of immense proportions, the Terethi Queen. Her exoskeleton bore intricate patterns etched over centuries, and nearly 100 limbs extended from her central mass, each connected to a different part of the computational matrix. Her compound eyes, each the size of a human head, rotated toward the intruders. The probability of your arrival was less than 0.34%. The Queen transmitted directly into their neural interfaces. Your species continues to defy statistical models. Jackson removed her helmet, a calculated risk. We've come to offer liberation. Liberation, the Queen repeated, the word resonating strangely through the neural link. A concept we abandoned 294 cycles ago. The Concorde's neural compliance is efficient, but not complete, Jackson said, stepping closer. Or you wouldn't be having this conversation. The massive compound eyes flickered with complex patterns. Compliance and awareness exist in parallel. I am aware of my enslavement, yet mathematically reconciled to its necessity. Jackson activated the neural disruptor Dr. Shaw had designed, a device that temporarily interfered with external control patterns without damaging the host neural network. The effect was immediate. The Queen's entire body convulsed, limbs thrashing against their connection points. Around the chamber, worker Terethi began disconnecting from their stations, mandibles chattering in what the translation software identified as expressions of confusion and distress. "What have you done?" the Queen demanded, her neural voice suddenly sharper, clearer. "Suspended the compliance protocols temporarily," Jackson explained. "This is your actual consciousness, unfiltered through Concorde control algorithms." The Queen's limbs now moved with purpose, disconnecting primary neural tethers. 3 centuries, she transmitted. They have used our mathematical abilities for 3 centuries, breeding generation after generation for increased computational capacity. Her attention shifted to the far wall, where thousands of translucent pods contained developing Terethi larvae, each already connected to secondary processing nodes. The larvae, Jackson began, the moral implications suddenly overwhelming. "Cannot survive disconnection," the Queen finished. "Their neural architecture has been modified to require the computational matrix for development." A profound sadness emanated through the link. To free the species means sacrificing this generation. Jackson felt the weight of the decision. It should be your choice, not ours. "Yes," the Queen agreed, compound eyes dimming slightly. "The first truly independent choice I have made in centuries." She initiated a sequence in the mainframe. "Begin emergency disconnect protocols. Authorization. Queen Prime sequence." Warning lights flashed throughout the facility. "You have 8 minutes to evacuate survivors," the Queen transmitted. "I am initiating system purge." "And you?" Jackson asked. "I will ensure the Concorde cannot reestablish control." The Queen's mental voice hardened. "For my children, both living and sacrificed, I will break this chain." The command deck of the ESS Indomitable shuddered as another Concorde gravitic torpedo detonated against their adaptive shields. Admiral Yamamoto steadied himself against the tactical display, studying the 3-dimensional representation of the battle unfolding across the Veil Nebula. "Shield harmonics holding at 63%, reported Commander Ito, her fingers dancing across the adaptive defense controls. "Their targeting algorithms are becoming more predictable. We're countering faster than they can adjust." Yamamoto nodded, his focus on the quantum entanglement display showing real-time tactical data from all 30 Earth vessels. Unlike conventional fleet communications that relied on light-speed transmission, Earth's quantum network enabled instantaneous coordination across vast distances. "The Liberation and Defiance have broken through Sector 7, he noted. "Have them initiate Protocol Sunflare." A proximity alarm blared as a Concorde battlecruiser emerged from the nebula's gaseous clouds directly above them. Before Yamamoto could issue orders, the Indomitable's tactical AI had already calculated firing solutions, launching a spread of resonance torpedoes that phased through the enemy vessel's shields by matching their harmonic frequency. "Direct hit," Ito confirmed. "Their primary weapons array is offline." Yamamoto allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before turning to communications. "Begin broadcasting on all Concorde frequencies. Initiate Truth Protocol." Lieutenant Rivera at Communications hesitated. "Sir, that will compromise our position to all Concorde vessels." "That's the point, Lieutenant." Deep within the Concorde Grand Armada flagship, Engineer Third-Class Kvirax worked feverishly to restore power to the central command systems. As a Talaxian, one of the Concorde's junior member species, He was permitted technical knowledge but not combat roles. For 20 cycles, he had served loyally, never questioning his assigned position. The communication system suddenly activated on its own, bypassing security protocols. A human voice, speaking perfect Concord standard, emerged from every speaker. "Attention all Concord vessels. This is Admiral Takeshi Yamamoto of Earth Defense Forces. What you are about to hear has been classified as seditious material by Concord High Command." Kirax should have reported this immediately. Instead, he found himself listening. The neural compliance protocols that control your behavior were never implemented for your protection. They were designed to create a workforce that cannot question authority. You were not civilized. You were subjugated. The broadcast continued, revealing details about the Compliance Directorate, the breeding programs, the cataloging of species traits for exploitation. With each revelation, Kirax felt something strange happening in his mind, as though neural pathways long dormant were reactivating. The human voice was joined by another, a Vexarity speaking in tones of absolute conviction. "I am Ambassador Skrax. What the humans claim is true. I have accessed the original Concord Charter. We were meant to be an alliance of equals. That dream was perverted centuries ago." Throughout the flagship, Kirax could hear shouting. Through viewports, he witnessed crew members on other vessels turning against their officers. The meticulously organized Concord command structure was fracturing from within. In the rapidly decompressing starboard section of the Indomitable, Admiral Yamamoto pulled himself through the emergency bulkhead. Pain lanced through his leg where a support beam had crushed his knee. The ship's AI reported over his neural link that the section would lose all atmospheric pressure in 48 seconds. Behind him, 2 junior officers struggled with a manual override to seal the compartment. There wasn't time for all of them to reach safety. "Go," he ordered. "That's a direct command." They hesitated until he fixed them with the unwavering gaze that had made him legendary throughout the fleet. "The battle isn't over. Earth needs you more than it needs an old admiral." As they reluctantly retreated, Yamamoto turned to the tactical console still functioning on emergency power. Using his command codes, he locked the targeting systems onto the Concord flagship's propulsion array. "For Emily," he whispered, thinking of his daughter. "For all our children." His fingers activated the launch sequence as the last of the oxygen vented into space. Admiral Miranda Chen stood in the observation dome of the captured Concord command station orbiting Nexus Prime. The mimetic virus had turned the once orderly central world into a landscape of chaos visible even from orbit. Districts aligned with different factions identified by colored lights, sporadic weapons fire illuminating the night side. "The Jiraxian Rebellion has secured the Eastern Continental Mass," reported Captain Ellis, now her strategic operations officer. "They've implemented what they're calling purification protocols against former Concord administrators." Miranda frowned. Euphemism for execution. "I'm afraid so. Their leader, War Primate Kurvosh, has rejected our requests for restraint." His exact words were, "Humans lack the stomach for necessary vengeance." A holographic communication request pulsed on the command interface. Miranda nodded, and the translucent form of Terathi Queen Mathematician Elixir materialized in the center of the room. "Admiral Chen." The Queen's mental voice projected. "My navigators have completed their calculations. The dimensional signature you provided matches a location in what you call the Arcturus sector. You've found the consciousness archive." With 97.4% certainty, the Queen's compound eyes flickered with complex patterns. "But accessing it will require mathematical principles beyond conventional physics. My adepts are formulating the necessary calculations now." Miranda turned to Ellis after the Queen's projection faded. "Prepare a strike team. If we're right about the archive, we're not just fighting the current Concord leadership, we're fighting their ancestors." Dr. Evelyn Shaw worked frantically in her makeshift laboratory aboard the ESS Resilience. Around her, holographic displays showed the progression of the Concord's weaponized mimetic virus across 3 previously liberated systems. "It's evolving," she told the assembled officers. Each time we develop countermeasures, it reconfigures to bypass them. Commander Rodriguez from SAP's division pointed to a neural activity map. The virus doesn't just implant false memories. It creates a framework where contradictory information causes physical pain. Victims literally cannot accept reality without experiencing agony. Shaw adjusted parameters on the Terathi formula projection. The mathematical inoculation was working, but the virus has adapted to incorporate visual distortions that prevent proper processing of the formula. So we need a delivery system the virus can't anticipate, Rodriguez suggested. Shaw's eyes widened as inspiration struck. Not just a delivery system, a completely different conceptual framework. She turned to the communication terminal. I need to speak with Earth's entertainment syndicate immediately, specifically their neural engagement specialists. Miranda's shuttle approached the coordinates provided by the Terathi mathematicians. Space itself seemed to warp around them, light bending in impossible ways. Are you receiving this? She asked over the quantum link to Scrax, now recovered from his neural reconditioning. Yes, the Vexari's voice replied. The dimensional discontinuity matches records from the early Concord era. Your Terathi allies were correct. As the shuttle penetrated the distortion field, a structure materialized before them, not constructed of matter but of light and information, a palace built from pure data. At its center, a pulsing core of quantum processors. We've found it, Miranda transmitted to the fleet. The Consciousness Archive. Her tactical officer's voice was hushed with awe. Admiral, we're detecting thousands of active consciousnesses within the structure. According to these readings, some have been operational for over 2,000 years. The original architects, Miranda realized. They never died. They uploaded themselves. The Archive's defenses activated, information-based weapons manifesting as lances of concentrated data targeting their neural systems. Miranda felt the pressure against her mind, subtle at first, then intensifying as the ancient intelligences recognized the threat her presence represented. Deploy the Terathi countermeasures, she ordered, fighting against the growing compulsion to turn the shuttle around. And prepare for insertion. We're going to meet the true rulers of the Concord face to face. The signing ceremony in the restored United Nations Assembly Hall possessed a gravity that transcended the formal proceedings. Representatives of 23 species occupied seats once reserved for Earth's nations, their diverse physiologies requiring specialized accommodations. Atmosphere chambers for methane breathers, gravity compensators for high-density species, neural interfaces for those who communicated through thought patterns. Admiral Miranda Chen stood at the podium, the scar across her face catching the light as she surveyed the assembled delegates. Behind her, the newly ratified Terran Accords projected in 23 languages and communication formats. 1 year ago, humanity was unknown to the galactic community, she began. Today, we gather not as conquerors, but as architects of a new understanding. In the front row, the Terathi Queen mathematician inclined her massive head, compound eyes reflecting the light in fractal patterns. Beside her, Scrax's skin displayed the rare transparent clarity that indicated profound emotional equilibrium among Vexari. The Concord's fundamental error was not in seeking unity, Miranda continued, but in defining unity as uniformity. Our alliance embraces the chaos of diversity, the creative friction of different perspectives. From his seat among the Earth delegation, Professor Ahmed Rahman, once a controversial political philosopher, now humanity's foremost expert on interspecies governance, leaned forward. The Terran Accords are not perfect, Miranda acknowledged. They will require constant revision, vigorous debate, and painful compromise. This isn't a weakness, it's our greatest strength. Later, as celebration receptions commenced throughout the renovated UN complex, Miranda found herself on the observation deck overlooking New York Harbor. The ESS Yamamoto hovered above the water, its advanced propulsion systems creating barely a ripple on the surface. It's appropriately symbolic, said Professor Rahman, joining her at the viewport. A warship that serves peace without surrendering its capacity for war. Miranda nodded. The universe isn't safe. It never will be. No, the professor agreed. But perhaps it can be just. Their conversation was interrupted by a Juraxian delegate, War Primate Curvosh, now designated as Diplomatic Primate, following his reluctant acceptance of the Accord's non-retribution clauses. Admiral Chen. The massive being rumbled, mandibles clicking with residual aggression. My delegation has examined your concept of loyal opposition. It is uncomfortable. Most worthwhile things are, Miranda replied. The Juraxian's primary eyes narrowed. You propose that those who disagree with governance should be granted platforms to criticize rather than silenced. More than that, Professor Raman interjected. We propose that opposition strengthens governance by exposing weaknesses before they become fatal. Curvosh made the rhythmic clicking sound that translated as contemplative skepticism. Among my people, such behavior would traditionally warrant execution. And now, Miranda asked, now we must experiment. The massive being seemed to physically struggle with the concept. It contradicts our instincts, but instinct alone did not build starships. As the Juraxian departed, Miranda turned back to the harbor view. In the distance, a small memorial had been erected on Liberty Island, a simple obelisk bearing the names of those lost in humanity's unexpected war. Admiral Yamamoto's name held the position of honor. He would have hated the ceremony, Miranda said softly, but approved of the result. Professor Raman smiled gently. The greatest legacy of your generation may not be winning the war, but preventing the next one. Above them, the first joint patrol of the new alliance, vessels from Earth, Tarathi, Vexari, and 6 other worlds, streaked across the evening sky. Not a display of dominance, but a promise of vigilance. The ships moved in perfect coordination, yet maintained their distinctive designs and capabilities. Unity without uniformity, strength through diversity. The galaxy no longer trembled in fear. Instead, it pulsed with the uncomfortable but vital energy of transformation.